Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And our guest today is Philip Palmer. He's director of sales at LiquidWeb, and Kelly Goolsby. He's director of solutions architecture at LiquidWeb. Welcome, guys.
Thanks,
Hey,
John.
thanks,
Thanks for having
John.
us.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
excited to have you on. Liquid Web I've known for a very long time. I think I got one of the original Liquid Web men, muscle men. That's
Yeah.
a big callback for any nerds out there. But and I'm also happy to say that Healthcare IT Today runs on a Liquid Web web server. So if you're listening to this on healthcareittoday.com, then you're using Liquid Web. So excited to dive in with you guys about not just what you do for media companies like us, which is helpful and useful, but also for many healthcare organizations that need HIPAA compliant hosting and some things like that. But before we go there, Kelly, why don't you kick us off? Tell us about yourself and LiquidWeb.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in IT sales, particularly hosting for 22 plus years now. Done everything from first line sales support. Now I'm solution architecture, right? So we are putting together the building blocks that meet customer objectives with Liquid Web products. I've been at Liquid Web about 7.5 of those years. And the thing I take from Liquid Web is our genesis is a small business, right? Healthcare, obviously, media companies. I'd also say there's an intersection. Companies have been pulled into healthcare who may have not been before, corporate HR departments, right, who are doing health and body tracking applications. We actually started because we're a Michigan company with a lot of insurance providers. And so, HIPAA was we were there for the beginning of HIPAA and then pre-high tech. So that's why we've cared about healthcare customers for a long time. So
Yeah,
that's us.
well, in our marketing organization, every health IT company is a media company to some degree, has a blog, has all of that as
Yeah.
well.
Also,
So
they're e-commerce companies too, more often, and they're companies who are having to do with telehealth. I'm sure you'll ask later what's changed. That's one of the things, but I won't jump ahead too far.
yeah, that's awesome. Philip, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been in sales since 2013. Before that, I had a robust military career. Believe it or not, there's a lot of similarities between military and sales, but at the
Wow.
heart of it, in both realms, what we do is we listen to the customer's needs. We sit there and truly understand their pains. Why are we having this conversation today? What has driven you to look at a provider like LiquidWeb? And then really we turn infrastructure that was once a drag on margins and we turn them into a strategic asset. That's what my role is to understand your pain, understand that drag, that cost of keeping it the same, and what would happen if you continue down that road, and then turn it into a strategic asset where your CFO, your CTO, your COO, your CEO are praising the tech stack because of what it's doing for margins versus being a drain.
Wow. I mean, that's so in line with the current healthcare environment where if it doesn't improve costs, they can't really talk about it.
Mhm.
So I love that you're talking about it. And, it's worth saying thanks for your service. I appreciate that as well. So it's great to have you on. Kelly, tell us, you kind of alluded to it. Like, how has demand for HIPAA compliant hosting and infrastructure really evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I think before, HIPAA is interesting. Is I think we deal with HIPAA, we deal with PCI and other regulatory compliances. That it's sort of objective and outcome based versus being always specific, right? There's ways to address concerns, and I think for a while providers saw it as if I get a HIPAA BA, I'm fine, right? And
Mm,
and that was the beginning of HIPAA. High tech obviously put providers like us on the hook as a business associate and not a covered entity, but the way healthcare is being delivered, the explosion of home healthcare. I think we'll talk later about a home healthcare customer. I know with the aging baby boomer set, that's going to increase. Not having to go into a doctor's office. COVID is obviously relevant and the impacts are changing, but more healthcare is delivered by telehealth. And then patient portals, right? We hear stories all the time of someone getting results in a patient portal before their doctor's appointment. And there is so much information exchanged in a patient portal. It used to be just an appointment scheduler, right? And it was sort of an afterthought. I don't think it's an afterthought anymore. All those different systems and the places that healthcare data and personally identifiable health information is.
yeah. We hear that a lot from the CIOs we on our CIO podcasts and things that they say it wasn't just enough to get the BAA like it used to. I mean, you're 100% right. Now that's their biggest point of potential risk is the third party vendor that they need to make sure is compliant. So what does it really take to create that kind of true HIPAA compliant hosting solution? Maybe you could start, Kelly, and then Philip.
Yeah, I think understanding where the risk points are, and some are covered by your hosting provider, some are covered by your facilities, but you want to make sure that you understand where data lives, how it's accessed, and who accesses it. And I know that sounds like no kidding, Kelly, but that's easier said than done sometimes, right? But understanding the environment, understanding the business objectives, because it's still a business, right? Everybody is there and to deliver a business outcome. And people are loyal to doctors, but until there's a breach or to whatever.
I was going to say, if you have a breach, it's a terrible business outcome.
Yeah, exactly. But that's one of the things that's changed, and that is a challenge, right? To keep compliant, because you have to grow, right? I think we're going to maybe talk later about sometimes you do something to grow, and you've got to keep security in mind, right? Like I need a server quickly because what we see too is a lot of acquisition in the industry, which I think is really, really unique for good or bad. And I acquire another provider or switch from a SaaS because I need to meet a demand, and I have to move fast. Well, fast and secure are sometimes at odds. And so that's changed a lot. If you're a growing business, you need to make those changes in time and make sure you remain compliant, right? That you get the latest update of the OS, that you've logged this server in your MDR solution, right? That it's covered. So a lot of things there, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit. When we think about where it's gone and what it really means to be HIPAA compliant, a lot of people look at a BAA. That doesn't secure your PHI. That it just doesn't, right? That's like signing a lease, and I like analogies, but that's like signing a lease and assuming that the roof won't leak ever. And that piece of paper, yes, it's a legal binding document, but that's not enough. We're talking about encryption at rest, in traffic. We're talking about role-based access. We're talking about real-time replications, and then also DR capabilities, patch and threat management, third parties. And we've alluded to the SaaS providers, but that's a big piece of that as well, right? And so there's a lot that goes into that. And we think about from the financial ramifications, you have a breach. Okay, now we've got fines. That's one piece. But then because you've got a breach, there's time, effort, and energy to fix that. Now we also are talking about customer acquisition, which each person now has a life value. You're not getting that customer acquisition. You're losing customers. You're losing productivity or self-service, and then your reputation. Each one of those have a dollar value associated with that. Think about how much it would cost from a marketing perspective alone, just marketing, to fix a breach and the reputation associated with that. So when we think about that whole package, it's not a BAA. It's so much else that goes into it, and the ramifications of not doing it right. To Kelly's point earlier, fast and secure aren't always the same. Let's do it right. Let's have a conversation. This isn't a transactional type of partnership with Liquid Web. We're going to sit down with you. We're going to understand what your true needs are, where your risks are, and we're going to build through Kelly and his team an environment that meets all your pain points. And because we're forward thinking, look at it from, you haven't thought about this, Mr. CTO, CIO, but what if this happened? And how do we fix that from ever happening?
I love that. Kelly, I mean, you kind of alluded to the challenges that happen when you have to scale. I mean, in healthcare, they're acquiring practices left and right. You got to scale up, right? Or, but then also, like, how do you maintain the security at scale? So talk to us about what are some of those new challenges that healthcare organizations face as they scale their hosting infrastructure and still need to have the same level of security and reliability and all those things.
Absolutely. And I'll preface that with, I think we're really good at knowing who our customer is. We're not going after we're not attracting the smallest healthcare providers out there. And we're also not, typically large, fully staffed IT departments are not where we work. And so small to medium providers have a particular challenge. Sometimes it's the breadth of applications, right? I need a new application that does X, right? EHR or whatever it is, a new patient portal system. So vetting those applications is tough, especially when the IT department might be 2, 3, 4 people who are doing a lot of different things, right? They're supporting endpoints, they're supporting machines in delivery rooms, things like that. And so someone who helps, check the box, not just check the box, but say, this application goes to this infrastructure. Have we included in your firewall rules? Have we, vetted the third-party provider? We're not doing that for you, but we're asking, do we host it? Do they host it? And so just asking those questions and inventorying applications and risk, and then making sure there's some change management rigor, right? Again, we can deploy a firewall, but if we don't open up the right rule set for a new server put behind that firewall and close the right ports, then we've done the client a disservice. So that's where we bring a team who's looking at that, who understands the customer objectives, keeps a run book on what the customer's trying to achieve, and then make sure we maintain some conformity as we build an environment out. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and Kelly is 100% right when we're looking from the IT department, but as we also scale, from a small provider and you're scaling, you're adding more and more infrastructure, the implications aren't just in the IT realm of the company, right? So we got downtime. Well, that's affecting SEO results for marketing. We have downtime. The operation side of it's being affected. We have downtime. We have a breach. CEO, owner, the doctor that owns the practice, all of a sudden they're answering about, bottom line to the board. It's impacting everybody. So as we scale, from an IT perspective, it's important for us to consider everything Kelly's addressing, but we also got to address the personas across the country or across the company, right? And what their needs are, because everything's going to have a ripple effect. We grow, great. We've got a demand, great. How does that affect everybody else? And
the risk is higher. The risk is higher as you grow, right, Phil? I mean, typically you're more practices, more scope, more employees. There's going to be more risk as you scale.
More legal concerns, from across the board. And so, not only are we being consultants from the IT perspective, but a part of what Liquid Web is going to do is sit down with that director of IT, that CIO, that CTO, and say, have you considered this? And that's going to force a conversation with the right parties internal to make sure that they're getting it right as well.
I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about that and talk about your ideal customer, that medium-sized healthcare organization who ironically has the exact same requirements as the largest healthcare organization out there, and probably a similar risk surface as well, because they need all the same applications of the large IDN or hospital health system, but yet they have much, fewer IT resources, especially in-house, to be able to do that. So it makes sense why they would work with someone like Liquid Web or other, IT providers to be able to address that. We've talked about security, which is great. I'd love to hear also about reliability and uptime. I think that's always a big topic, when we look at it, especially from a HIPAA compliant hosting company like Liquid Web. How do you look at uptime and reliability, and how do you approach that, for healthcare organizations are like, hey, if this is down, my business is hit, which is what Philip said, but guess what? My patients are at risk too. So how do you all approach that?
Let me start on that one from a financial perspective, because this is the conversation I probably have 6 times, 7 times a day, right? And I alluded to it, and I call it the 5 buckets. When we're thinking about the cost of a downtime, most providers go, I couldn't provide service. I couldn't bill for this. Or the insurgent or the insurance carrier requires me to have uptime like this, and now I can't do this, and I've got to eat the cost. So we think about it from that perspective, but then we also have to look at customer acquisition. We've got to talk about customer retention. You have downtime and I'm a customer and I can't get into my portal to get the information that I need because it's secure, but now at this moment of time, I just can't even get to it. Well, how long am I going to be a customer? What's the value of what I'm going to provide? And also, what is the value of the insurance that you're going to get because of that patient, right? Same thing's kind of true with the acquisition, the life value of that person. Then we think about marketing, we think about reputation, we think about the brand itself. And if you are a small to medium size, you should be thinking about awareness and you should be thinking about your brand. That's how you're going to grow to hopefully be one of the bigger providers down the road. Time, effort, and energy. Everything stops because we're down, and instead of doing revenue generating activities, everybody's now fixated on putting out this fire. That not only is that salaries and operational costs associated with it, but that's future growth that's being hampered because I can't go and do the revenue generating activity that I needed to do to build out the next phase of our operations. So when we really think about it, and I'll give some fake numbers here, but they may say, oh, we're down for an hour. We lost $10,000 worth of service costs. Okay. What about the other aspects, those other 4 buckets? And when we start to sum that up, an hour of downtime for a medical practice can be upwards of 6 figures.
Yeah. Let alone the burnout that everyone faces when there's downtime.
Yeah.
No one
yeah.
likes
Well, it. Yeah. And John, you didn't ask for a customer case study yet. I know it's one of the things we're going to talk about, but we've done particularly well with home healthcare providers. And I heard, a provider, and they're actually a SaaS provider to the home healthcare industry and have their own side business of home healthcare. They have providers out in the field, right? And they're providing the application that gives them the next appointment where they put their notes. And then all that has to be done to bill. We all know that, right? Charting paperwork is one of the biggest drags on all this staff, but all that cascades when your systems aren't available. And to them, they have these providers out in the field who are independent very often, right? And they're the holding company, essentially. It's helping them deliver service. So you have all those financial outcomes and you have patients waiting, right? I think that's, nobody gets into healthcare just for money. It's for money and patient outcomes. And we hear about that. Both are affected, right? You've got a bunch of providers out in the field. They don't even know where their next appointment is because that's how they manage their day. It's the back end of a mobile application, right? Yep. And super important.
And they're getting paid to sit in their car or at a coffee shop because they can't do anything, but they're still getting paid. And then all these appointments that when it finally does come up, they're passed or we've got to make up somewhere else, right? And so now we're paying overtime associated. So when we think about the operational costs, and Kelly's 100% right, downtime, that cascading effect is extremely expensive. So I would ask, if you're running into downtime right now, whether it's with another provider, another vendor, or you have on-prem, why? Why are you allowing yourself to drain your bottom line because of downtime? Where you come to us or a provider reliable like us, and go and do the activities that you need to grow your business and allow that burden to be on us.
Yeah. Well, and Philip, even worse is if, they're independent often in the home care space and they can't see patients because you have downtime. And then they say, screw you, I'm going to another vendor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even worse outcome than the fact that you
Yeah.
have to pay them overtime or you're paying them sitting there because they often don't get paid if they don't see someone. So, Kelly, could you dive into some of the details? I mean, Philip just made a really interesting case about, hey, an enterprise provider like Liquid Web that provides HIPAA-compliant hosting can provide more reliability than you can in-house. What does that mean? Like, describe, what you've done at Liquid Web to ensure it's more secure and more reliable and has better uptime.
Yeah, and I love this question, but I do want to, a couple things. It's going to be different for every client, right? Because there's always a budget. We understand that, and we're going to try to help our people. Everybody has to present to a board, to a CFO, and so we're going to help build the case. We're also going to understand not everybody can do 2 full data centers that are HA on 2 sites. It'd be great if you could, and so we're going to be able to show the future. Maybe you need this for a 2026 budget, right? Here's what we want, where we want to be. The other thing I wanted to say, you can't separate availability and security, because take a DDoS attack, right? Very often, the first point of a DDoS attack is to overwhelm IDS systems, EDR, to give a vector for an attack, right? I'm surprised we've gone almost half an hour and haven't mentioned malware, but it is, I think healthcare, you've seen this stat, you probably reported this stat, it's the #1 industry for paying ransomware and malware vulnerabilities because you have to, right? And you're also more likely if you're a large person to carry cyber insurance. So we do a lot of things, right? It could be just HA in a single data center. We have a few different technologies that we can do that. Hardware level HA. We could do application level HA with database resiliency. We could do load balancing. It might simply be, let's get some backups that are encrypted as they're taken and as they're transited to another data center, right? Not everybody can afford a hot site in a separate data center, But most of our clients, when we talk about the benefits, can afford sort of the encryption at rest and the backups that we get to another data center, right? That's out of the same geo and not associated with liquid web, so that, let's just say, and we do a lot to prevent a social engineering attack against us. But what if someone does get into your system and is impersonating you? We've got backups that aren't touched by liquid web or by you that are in another data center, right? So that's the way we look at sort of disaster recovery, business continuity for healthcare, but it matches what we do for legal firms and for e-commerce, right? There's some intersectionality with all three of those because the outcome is the same.
Yeah. And add on to this, so your question is, how do we keep that downtime from happening? One, we've got 5 nines rather, 5 nines of uptime, right? So that's important stuff. Because if you're hosting this in your own in closet, or you've got a room stashed somewhere in the hospital,
server room,
right? A server room, you're now thinking about, okay, what if my electricity goes down? What if my bandwidth goes down? What if my servers crash? We've got +1 and +2 on everything. So, that's a big piece of it as well. And then we have the expertise on site, where a lot of times in these hospitals and these practices, yes, you may have a server room, but it's somebody's collateral duty or job to go and maintain this and keep it up and running. And that takes a back seat, right? And then all of a sudden, 2 years down the road, we're getting close to a refresh and the server is messing up, or we have electricity fail, or it's heating up too much and we don't have the appropriate cooling. If it's on-prem, that's a catastrophic issue.
Or the person who set it up is gone. We hear that a lot, right?
Oh yeah. I'm dealing with
Kyle set this up 4 years ago. Yeah.
I'm dealing with one right now that the person that deals with it is retiring in December, and we're building out a brand new infrastructure for them because they don't have anybody that can maintain it themselves. That's their pain point. When this person leaves and retires, and they're happy for them. But at the end of the day, now they're at the mercy of this infrastructure running without them. Right. And so when we think about, to your question, how do we make sure the reliability and uptime, it's multifaceted, from the infrastructure that we have to the agreements we have with bandwidth providers and the multiple lines of electricity coming into our data, everything, right? And we don't expect those that we're working with to have to think about those kind of considerations. Again, and I said it earlier, we take that burden. All you need to know is that you're going to have 5 nines of uptime, and then you're going to have the industry's best talent, i.e. Kelly, working with you to make sure this infrastructure is up and running all the time.
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like our data center in Michigan, all of them, but we're watching the weather, right? And so if there's a storm imminent, we're already firing up generators and testing them. And I don't tell all customers about that. I think it's super, super cool. Some care, some don't. You shouldn't have to think about that, right? And obviously hospitals, for their primary systems, are testing their generators, but sometimes IT is forgotten stepchild in all of that.
Yeah. And when we take it the next step, a lot of these, they have an MSP that they're under contract to run all of this for them. And we're literally talking to the doctor. He went to med school. He doesn't have a degree in anything technology. He went to med school. I would go to him to get my vaccines. I would go to him to, if I, separate my collarbone. That's his expertise. But we're talking to these individuals that would never consider all of this stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm laughing because I've been that IT guy for practices and for even for UNLV's health center. Is like, like you're taking me back, to all these memories. But it is amazing how different it is now in the cloud and the opportunities that are available to be able to host it in a reliable way. That's more reliable than locally. So I love that. Philip, we've kind of alluded to pricing and paying for it and different things of that. I'd love to just address it head on. Like, how can a health IT leader ensure predictable pricing, which I think is key for most healthcare organizations, without surprise expenses from their hosting provider? I'm just waiting for the cloud providers to jack up their rates, by the way. I just think it's inevitable. It's just how quickly are they going to do it? But, how do you look at that, ensuring this predictable pricing for your customers?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's probably top of mind for a lot of your listeners right now. When we think about it from some of the bigger providers, there's pricing based off of usage. And then when we think about on-prem, the total cost of ownership, there's so much variability that's going to happen. For us, we come in, we understand your pains, we build out an infrastructure through Kelly's team, and we agree on, hey, this is going to solve our problems, right? And then we're going to have a conversation of, hey, how long are you wanting this partnership with us? And most of them are 36 months. We go ahead and lock that in, and it's the same price from day one all the way to the end of that term. And at the end of
And
the
you don't have to know IO, you don't have to know bandwidth between tiers, you don't have to
Yep.
know this usage fee, that. And again, the hyperscale clouds are great for certain use cases. If you have enough business intelligence to know exactly what your IOPS in every application, healthcare providers typically don't. And surprise bills, we've all got a budget, and going over budget is not a good thing.
Yeah. And so Kelly's 100% right. But when we look at this, again, making up numbers because everybody has a different use case and everyone has a different need. Let's say the infrastructure with us is $500, $6,000 a month, or $6,000 a year, right? So now we can do that math. We know what it's going to be in 3 years. I can budget for that. I can go either steal from Peter to pay Paul to get that budget, or I've already allocated that budget to me. The converse of this is if I have it on-prem, generally, when you think about all the capital and operational expense associated on-prem, it's 5x, 6x of that, to include IT staff, their salaries, their benefits. We talk about support and maintenance contracts with the MSP. If it is in colo, now we've got to pay that as well. Or real estate post-COVID, a lot of us are trying to offload real estate, right? Because we're all remote. And so now we're paying for that. If there's lease, there's so many intangibles that go with this licensing. When we think about it from a license standpoint, if it's on-prem, you assume that at the market price, whereas somebody like Liquid Web, we get it at a margin that we offload to you as well, right? So we're cutting costs there. And then every 3 to 5 years, we're looking at a refresh, right? Do you want to have that capital expense of upwards of $1 million+? Or would you rather we assume that, and you don't, your CFO is going to say, thank you, you got rid of this capital expense, because capital expenses depreciate, right? Capital expenses, is not liquid at all, right? So to offload that cost if you need to. When we think about that, and I'm working with a customer right now, healthcare provider in Kentucky, and when we ran the total cost of ownership of their on-prem, it was 5x of what our cost is going to be.
Yep.
And everybody in the C-suite or with a VP associated with their name is going to say thank you because of the margins. And then you tie in the reliability and the security. If you're a director of IT and you have this victory, think about what that does for you in your career projection.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is most people don't want to be in the infrastructure business anymore. They want to be a more strategic asset for the healthcare organization. And, they want someone reliable that they can trust because they need the infrastructure, but they don't want to be in the infrastructure business. That's 100% the trend that's happening. Kelly, you've shared a few examples. I'd love to hear some other success stories of healthcare organizations moving to a fully managed HIPAA hosting solution, or, and which organizations are best for, this type of hosting solution and some of the benefits that they've seen by moving there. Philip just gave a great one, a financial one, but I'd love to hear other examples.
Well, I think we already talked about the home healthcare provider. We have also seen smaller, pain management clinics for some reason they're very much a business, right? And they're about scale. I'm going to open a clinic here and there, and I'm going to diversify. And typically, right, you don't have a central IT staff. So we've had a couple of that type of provider. And I think people get scared every now and then. We've seen IT leaders, I have to protect the business or my job, right? My area. Well, in one of the examples, I think it was a pain management clinic with 4 or 5 locations. They had an IT guy. They moved to Liquid Web. They still have that IT guy. He's just doing different things. right? He's able to go vet new applications, new marketing applications. Again, we talked about that overlap between marketing and patient delivery. And so he still has a job. His job is just more green than red, right? If you think about gaining new money versus protecting old revenue and old systems. And so that's a success story, and they've been able to scale faster, and they've actually added IT staff, right, on sort of top of the line applications versus the care and feeding of the business line applications, the critical stuff, right? They're able to go out and evaluate new things. And so we typically see that growth, and then, you know, we know when someone's buying more from us, they're growing, right? People don't typically buy from us just because it means their practice is growing. They've added new locations. We all talk about too, you know, I think love them or hate them, freestanding emergency rooms, smaller clinics, the private equity. We've had some providers who sold recently, right, and gone through an acquisition. And that's a tough discussion for us when we have a contract. And so often the acquiring entity, right, sometimes it's private equity, sometimes it's a larger provider, will say, hey, you've got to move. Well, we have that conversation. We're happy to have it. And because it's not an expense on the books, like Phil said, we end up keeping that relationship. And we've had 2 or 3 of those in the last couple of years, right, where a doctor is retired and sold his practice, and we've gained a new customer via that. So again, I can't speak to specifics because almost all of our HIPAA BAs come with an NDA. So unless we have agreed to name the customer, I can't, but I can talk, you know, some of those areas.
Yeah, and you know, Kelly's 100% right. And I beat the financial thing. That's my role here, is to be a consultant for these providers, right? But what Kelly's kind of addressing with that shift from the focus, it went from a IT cost center to a IT value engine, right? And so same headcount now, and Kelly used the word from red to green, we're driving revenue. That same headcount is driving revenue versus babysitting decrepit and depreciating assets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's clear that, you know, every healthcare organization needs a quality HIPAA compliant hosting solution, you know, whether it's, you know, for your website, or whether it's a portal, or whether it's your e-commerce engine, or whether it's, you know, some other application that you're hosting in the cloud. You know, they all, you know, have a need in this area. So I appreciate you all taking time to share a lot of insights and perspectives on this. Kelly, where can people go to learn more about LiquidWeb?
Yeah, liquidweb.com. Search it, put it in Chat GPT, whatever you want to do. I hear that search is going away and it's all AI now. I would also say, Phil and I love these conversations, even if we can't help you. You know, like I said, with the power of no is awesome. There's certain things we don't do. The example, we don't do end-to-end encrypted email. There's providers that are incredibly good at that. So when we assess that inventory of the provider, we'll say, this should not come to us, or this is great as SaaS. So I'm happy to have those conversations, even if it doesn't you know, help LiquidWeb gain a new customer. So I know you can find me on LinkedIn. I think Bill's on LinkedIn as well. So we're happy. If you don't go to liquidweb.com and talk to someone there, you can call the sales number or find us on LinkedIn and send a connection request. Happy to chat.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelly and Philip. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and information about this important area for healthcare organizations. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting application. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.